work? Is it going to work? Because sometimes... Oh, okay. Here we are. We're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Good Questions, Bad Answers. Today we have a awesome guest here today, Eric Rios. But first, my name is Joshua Jack. My co-host is...
Tim Azzo.
And as you know, for those of you that have watched this for any period of time, we like to hear questions, and we like to give... Well, we try to give good answers, but you know, it's probably going to be bad. So anybody that watches this, you take it for what it's worth. But anyway, so you're watching this live tonight. And for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you spending your time with us. And if you're listening to this on podcast in the future, hey, I appreciate you and thank you. All right. So without further ado, let's introduce Eric. Eric. Okay, for those of you that are watching now, and it looks like we have 4 viewers, which I appreciate you. Eric, I have known him for 5 years. 5 years.
Long time.
And the thing I like about Eric is he has this attitude that he can do anything, and he can. I mean, we all can. We all can. But it's amazing to see his story and to see, you know, what he's accomplished in his life, because you know he's a tradesman, he's a master plumber. He's written how many books have you written?
2 books.
2 books on marriage counseling or coaching. And I mean, he's just a joy to talk to, and I really wanted to get him on to kind of share his and I really don't have an agenda for tonight, so a lot of this is going to depend on you, the viewer, to ask questions. If we approach a subject that you want to know more about, be sure to hop on, use the comments below, we can bring it on. Benjamin Hampton, he says, I appreciate you. Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you. And so that Eric, I know you've seen this before, but man, I love this platform because man, you can do stuff like that. You can really include the audience. So tell us about yourself, Eric.
190 pounds, gray hair.
You like long walks on the beach. You really do.
And I'm not single. I don't take life too serious.
Yeah.
Unless an employee doesn't show up to work, and then maybe I take it serious. But beyond that, I don't take it too serious. I even told my office manager, I said, what would you do if you had a boss that was always so serious all the time? I said, what would you do? You would hate your job. Mm-hmm. Prank call the office. I mean, and I do stupid stuff all the time, you know, to our own people, you know, and I just do it for fun because I want them just to relax and have a little bit of fun as employees and not feel so stressed out all the time.
Right. I think if you take care of your people, they're going to take care of you, and it also just creates a good environment. So, and then also that you're approachable too. Like, so, you know, I'm sure that if you have the environment is where your employees can come to you and talk to you about different things, even tough things, they don't feel worried about doing that, which I'm sure helps, right?
Oh, it helps tremendously.
Yeah.
You got to be approachable. You got to be flexible, and you got to be approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Not, you know, you're going to lose in business.
Right. So when you graduated high school, what did you do, man? Like, what made you get into what you're doing?
First of all, let's go back when I graduated middle school. Let's start there.
Okay.
I go to high school to graduate high school. So the only thing I ever graduated was middle school.
Okay.
I was 15 years old.
Uh-huh.
And then I just lived life on my terms and ran the streets, did all the stupid things that young people do with no supervision.
Mm-hmm.
So I never went to high school. But then when I was 18 years old, I decided to go to trade school, and I lied my way into that because I had to have a GED, and I lied to them. And back then, you know, this is almost 30 years ago, 31 years ago. I mean, they really didn't check those things.
The power of the internet, right? They ruined a lot of lies.
So I ended up lying myself into that. My wife's making fun of me through the window there. Bad gestures.
All right.
I want to go back to where she is.
Thanks.
But I mean, it was I did everything the hard way in life.
Mm-hmm.
Everything the hard way, literally. I mean, I dropped out of school when I was 15 years old. I didn't want to go to school. I hated school. I was very intelligent. I just didn't enjoy school. So when I was 18, I went to welding school, learned to be a welder. Worked in that trade for 5 years. Was laid off 14 times. It was a rough 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the industry. And then of course I got into doing plumbing probably 3 years after that, because I worked for 2 different newspapers. And why I got into plumbing? Because it was convenient.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why. My mom worked for a company. I needed a job. I took the job. I excelled at it. I was really good at it. And I stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
I always had to look at the long term, because in that time I ended up having 3 boys. So I always had to look long term. I couldn't, because when you're in the stress, when you're in the midst of just being life just sucking, you're financially strapped. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know where the money's going to come from. You're making, because I started out making $8.44 an hour as a plumber.
Mm-hmm.
$8.44 an hour, raising 3 boys. I was a single parent raising 3 boys, making $8.44 an hour.
Wow.
So long term, where you could be, was the biggest challenge, because I could have taken a job making $12 an hour somewhere years ago, and it was okay, and that would have solved a momentary problem. But keeping my eye forward was the biggest challenge. Was, okay, where can I be in 5 years from now? Where can I be in 10 years from now? Where can I be in 20 years from now? And that was the biggest challenge that I've ever had. Because raising kids, if you have kids, they cost a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, so what I ended up doing is I stuck it out. And 5 years later, I got my journeyman license. And then, of course, 5 more years later, I started a business, and I built it, sold it, started another business. So it all paid off, but you had to look long term. Always looking long term.
So what did you do in those times where you were at wit's end? What kept your feet to the grindstone? I know you say look out, and we all do, right? We all need to have a forward thinking and have an eye towards the future, but sometimes it's hard. So in those times that you were going through those difficult situations, was there anything that you did, or was there anything that inspired you to be like, no, this is the way?
Well, we have no choice.
Right.
When you take responsibility for your life and you own your life situation, knowing that it's neither good nor bad, it's just life.
Mm-hmm.
You have no choice but to continue moving forward. Because if you stop, and I've seen many people just stop. They stop, they digress, go backwards, and their life begins to suck, and it begins to fall apart more. Well, that doesn't do you any good at all. I sold pizzas door to door in Compton, California, knocking on doors with pizzas that were ready to eat for $5 a piece. I had to make cash. So I would knock on the door, and I'd give them a spiel. I had a hot pizza right here. I'd hand them, I'd try to sell them a pizza right there. And I sold pizzas like that. Pocket full of cash, walking through Compton. And it was crazy, because these people, they'd be like, dude, you were in the wrong neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't care. I needed to make money. I did what it took to make money. So my motivation was the fact that I had 3 boys. And also, I could not survive. I've done this my entire life. I started my first business when I was 7, mowing lawns. Went out, put signs on people's yards, on their houses, and I started business mowing lawns. And 14 years old, I was selling fruit. You're door to door, going knocking on doors, selling fruit. I've always been that way. I have to, because, dude, life's too short. You get one life to live that we know of, and I want to make sure it's a good life. That's always been a big motivator for me.
So I'm kind of curious, why did you pick Compton? Like,
I
of all the neighborhoods.
I did not know. I did not know.
Yeah.
I was the guy that I was riding with, and he took us to Compton. Had no clue, dude. Had no clue where I was. I got it, but but I've never had a problem with people, so for me it was quite. And I just got out of the car and I did what I had to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, looking back, when I look back now, would I do it now? Nah. Yeah, I probably would. It's a different world today than it was then.
Right.
But still, it was, when I look back, I'm like, maybe not the smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea where I was.
Right.
I was there to make money and carrying a big pocket full of cash, walking from house to house to house. All the windows are barred up on all these houses. People are answering their doors. They're very skeptical. Hey, what's this white boy doing here at my door?
Right.
It was looked like a zipper in a button factory. You didn't fit there.
Right.
Where did this guy come from?
Well, in my own life, I have seen, but for the grace of God, there goes I, several times. We all get in situations where we're like, But real quick, Patrick, he says hello from Oklahoma City. Patrick, thank you for being here. And then my brother, who is in Arizona, thank you, Jared.
Hey.
Hey, Jared.
Which, Eric, Tim, you're going to meet him at some point. I'm sure. So, all right. So, okay. So when did you know, was it pretty early on that you knew, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on? Or was it just kind of like like, obviously you had to look out 5 years from then, and then you knew that was your path, but was it early on, or was it just kind of like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, plotting, and then
I never
does that make
planned.
sense? Okay. All right.
I never planned one thing. I had a job. I had kids to raise. I had gone through a divorce. I got remarried. I mean, I had kids to raise. I had never had a plan of starting a business to start out. I just worked. I worked to survive. I worked every single holiday. I worked every Thanksgiving. I worked every single Christmas. I always worked to make sure we had enough money to live, no matter what it took. So I never planned. So what caused me to start a business was I got so tired of hearing, well, we may have to lay you off. We're getting slow right now. We may have to lay you guys off. And so I'm like, I got to do something better. I got to do something that I can secure my own future without having to rely on somebody else.
Right.
So then I just spent once I made that decision, I spent 6 months preparing. I secretly, got all the proper licensing, because it took 20,000 hours of working as a plumber, in order to get your master license. So here where I live locally.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, I did all that secretly behind everybody's back. Nobody knew. And I read 2 specific books on how to start a plumbing business. I've never started a business. So you only know what you know.
Right.
But the day I started, I quit a very good job, a high paying job. I was taken very well. I was treated like a king with this company where I worked for. So the day I started, I didn't have one customer. I had 0. I had nothing. I quit the job, not knowing where I was going to get it from. This is the first time I've ever done this. But as soon as I committed to it, it was like instantaneous. The customers just started to flow. I started to go out and meet people, and the customers started to flow. Now, my first year, I set a goal to do $100,000 in revenue my first year of business. I did $365,000 in revenue my first year.
Very nice.
So that's not a bad. So I met all my 1-year goals just like that instantly in the first year. Actually, I think that was my 5-year goal. So I put a 5-year goal because I wrote a business plan. I wrote a bunch of goals. Because once again, when you've never done it, you don't know what to expect. You don't know how to project, where you're going to be or what it's going to be like. So so my 5-year goals I did in the first year, which I was pretty happy with.
Yeah, that definitely accelerated the plan that you didn't plan. So what year was roughly what time was that? What year was that?
September 1, 2008.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing.
Right.
And then
everybody said that was the wrong time to start a business.
Yeah.
I told everything that, well, you're going to starve, you're not going to make any money, you're going to be wishing you had your job back, and that's not me. Because to me, it's simple. Making money is not hard to do. I can go out, if I'm good at what I do, I can go sell what I do all day long, especially a service like what I offer. Plumbing is a simple service to offer. When you do residential service and repair, commercial service and repair, it's all easy to do. So it's easy to monetize. But I was told all those things, you're never going to make it like everybody else. But but here I am. This is 12 years later. I'm on my
company. Say that again. You broke up just a bit there.
I'm on my 12 years later. I'm on my second company, even though all these people said I would never make it. I mean, was it hard? Absolutely. Did I cry? Absolutely. Did I cry a lot? Absolutely. Was the learning curve beyond anything I've ever imagined? Absolutely.
So, man, there's a wealth of knowledge that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for someone else that might be looking into what you do or what you've done or what piece of advice, I mean, it could be, trades related or just life related. What are some of the biggest things that you've come across that have helped you out, or going through the experience, what has just really made sense to you that you think would help someone else?
Learning how to become a better you. So I wrote a book on marriage called The Secret to Marriage, and I wrote another book called Built to Succeed, which is just on development. So the one thing I've learned that no matter what you do in life, it all starts with you. If you want to be a better business person, you have to become a better business person. If you want your business to grow, you need to grow first. You're going to grow past who you are. So my third year of being in business, I decided to hire a business coach because, John Maxwell says the law of the lid. You
Right.
grow your lid and you stop. What you know is where you're going to stop. So I said, well, I'm 3 years in. We're doing 565,000 in revenue. I said, well, but I'm sort of stuck. I don't really know what else to do or where to go. So I spent $25,000 hiring a business coach for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
But that next year, the next year I generated an additional $500,000 for that year. So I did 1.1 million. It went from 565 to 1.1 million in 1 year just by a $25,000 investment. So when
I pay that all day long. If that's the case.
Yeah, right.
So, but when you look at the at the why, what's the one big factor I would tell anybody is find somebody who's done what you want to do, and let them help you do what you want to do. I talked to a guy. He was working as a handyman, and I'm like, okay. I said, what if I could show you how to make $20,000 more? I said, would you be interested? He goes, oh my God, I would be so interested. I would love to. So when I sit down with him, and in 5 minutes, I showed him how he could increase his revenue by $20,000 a year. And this was such a small amount; he could do so much more. But I knew we had to start him out at a very small amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I've already done it, and I wanted to show him how he could do it. And all he had to do was raise his wages by he charged $25 an hour. All he had to do was charge $35 an hour. Now, handyman around here, where I live in the St. Louis market, like you're a true handyman, sir, they'll charge $165 an hour. I said, just charge 10 more an hour. I went so small, incremental. I said, but that would give you an additional $20,000 a year. For him, that was like all he needed. But I knew that, and I wasn't going to say, well, maybe you should charge, $80 more an hour, and and you're going to be where you need to be, make the money you need to be, because that's really where you should be.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't there. So the biggest thing is find someone smarter than yourself who knows how to do what you want to do. Like Tim. Tim knows something that I don't know. He knows how to sell things on Amazon. I don't have a clue how to sell anything on Amazon. I just know how to push the button and turn it on. And that's what, yeah.
I press buy, it comes to me. It's like magic.
But that's the thing is, if I wanted to learn how to sell something on Amazon, I'm going to go to Tim.
Right.
How do I do this? If I want to know how to do a live stream podcast as you're doing now, or live videos, Facebook Lives, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you, hey, how do I do this and make this better? Because I learned it on my own, but at what expense? That is at what expense? So when I hired my first business coach, the first thing he said to me, he said, Eric, you're going to lose all your employees. And I'm like, no way. There's no way. They love me. I'll never lose them. I lost every employee I had because I was forced to change business systems the way I did business. Mm-hmm. Biggest struggle for me is I had done it one way. He said, no, in order for you to be successful, you have to do it this way. So the learning curve was extraordinarily hard, but it was worth every second of it. Because today I could go to your town, start a business, and be making $1 million a year in revenue in less than 3 years. No problem at all in a service company. Mm-hmm. And if there were enough employees that were actually available, we could do it in 1 year. But you have to have the manpower and the people to do it. Because we know each technician can generate about $300,000 a year in revenue if they're selling the work and doing the work. That's pretty across the board what I've seen nationwide.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Man, it's interesting that you bring up the the importance of finding a mentor or a coach or those that have gone before. And it's interesting that you bring up the fact that you started the guy off small, and I believe the reason why you did it was because you said he wasn't there yet.
No, it fit his mindset.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. Like it's funny because we all have self-defeating limited beliefs, things that, I can't do that. I can't do that. And what you just did was really cool because you pushed him a little bit out of his comfort zone until he got confident in that. And now he's going to keep growing, if that makes any sense. So that's real. I like how you did that.
And I think that's the biggest thing you have to remember is bigger is not better. You cannot be revenue driven. You have to be profit driven. So the one thing I learned by being in my accountant, my CPI was that he said, Eric, be profit driven, not revenue driven. Don't just go for revenue, because everybody like, oh my God, you're making $1.6 million. You're doing really good. I mean, but yet when you look at the bottom line, you're not keeping any money. The revenue looks good. But you can be $100 million company too, and that you're making, but what are you keeping at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So you keep two things. You keep time and you keep money. But you got to decide how much do you want to keep out of each one of those, and bigger is not always better. So when I started this company, I decided I'm going to do this. I laid out a plan of what I would never do again and what I would. And by doing so, what I get is I get lots of freedom.
Right.
My wife, she says, you only work 10 hours a week. That's all you ever work. I'm like, yeah, but that's an important 10 hours that I work.
I have to say that I live vicariously through you when I see your pictures on Facebook of your travel to Hawaii and Florida and everywhere else you go. I love it.
Too. I mean, I like time. Time is the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
It's time with my family.
It's funny because I know Tim will say the same thing. What you just said makes a lot of sense. Like, you hear people boast all the time of, especially in the information market, people selling, different courses, knowledge-based, they're always saying, oh, well, I did this and this and this. But like you, I'm like, how much are they keeping? Right. Yep. How much money are they really spending and how much are they really keeping? Because, people can make claims all day long on the internet, but like you said, you could be a 1.5, 1.6 million company, but if it costs you 1.2 million to get that 1.6, then really you're not. You're really only like $500,000 or whatever.
Well, right, and that's the thing is and I like, for me, I want the time. I want the time. I want anything else. It's not about money to me. It's about how much life do I get to live while I'm alive, and can I make enough money to live life and live it fully? I've talked to people who say they haven't been on a vacation in 3 years. I'm like, there's a problem there. There's a problem. You are a slave to your business. You're a slave to everything you do, and to me, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. So, with all of the stuff that you've done, and obviously, you created several businesses. What other projects are you working on now, or what else are you getting involved in?
Oh, there's
always something.
My wheels are always turning. So they're always.
Okay, well, let's say this. What have you done that was a failure? What did you learn from it? And then, tell us something that you did that was successful and what you learned from that.
Okay, so
nothing like being on the spot.
Started a fitness company once called myfitnessreminder.com. That was the name. That was going to be the name of the fitness company. I spent several $1,000s working on the trademark and all the thing, the website, all the stuff built. I was willing to invest 20, 30 grand into making this happen. So then when I was getting the trademarks, I had my fitness pal. They challenged my trademark. And they said, well, we're not going to let you get that name. And I'm like, God, I've invested so much time and energy into this My Fitness Reminder. So what it was I thought, well, first of all, I hate fitness. And I hate fitness. But I'm thinking, well, maybe I do something this would be cool to do. Like, what the hell am I doing fitness for if I hate it?
Right.
So my goal was we were going to call you. Say you wanted to go to the gym, and you go to the gym at 7:00 in the morning. We were going to call you at 6:45 as a reminder for you with a motivational message that, hey, Joshua, this is Eric with myfitnessreminder.com. It's time to get out there. Let's get busy. Let's go work out. Let's get strong. Some kind of fun, silly, motivational message as a reminder to you to always keep you going, keep you moving forward.
Uh-huh.
When we had it all set up to where it would run on automatic, you would subscribe, you'd run automatic. Then once I got challenged, I'm like, I really don't want to do this, because I asked my lawyer, I said, can I beat MyFitnessPal? They said, no, you don't have enough money to beat them. I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I walked away from it, and I never liked it in the first place, but I had fun trying to do it. And it was nothing that I would have ever enjoyed. I don't like fitness. It's just a job.
Right.
And I want to be a job. But it was fun, though. It was fun just to say I got to do it, because I learned so many things about myself, about just working with different people, working with different businesses, and just trying to build something from an online platform.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not very good at that at all. Brick and mortar, you get me out in the service area, it's simple. I think it's so easy. Online, I'm still learning. I need your help.
See, that's so wild how yeah, you're right. Like we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and that's why it's good to surround ourselves with people that have knowledge of all these different things, because you know, like I have no idea of brick and mortar. And honestly, I don't have very much idea about online either. That's why I surround myself with Tim and you. I'm a networker. I connect people. I connect people with ideas, opportunities, and things like that. That's what I do. That's what I'm okay at. But so tell us something that I mean, besides your businesses, which obviously are very well done. What have you learned in that journey, or is there anything else that you have went after and accomplished and learned from that?
I wrote 2 books. My first book, was it took me about 6 months to write. So the learning process of how to write a book was pretty big. It was just a big learning curve. If you've never written a book, it's a challenge. People always think that writing a book is one of the hardest things you could do. They're like, "You wrote a book? Oh my God, I can't believe you wrote a book." Really? They're shocked that you wrote a book. I'm like, it's easy. Anybody can write a book. So what I learned from writing the first book was when I wrote the second book, it took me 7 hours. It was a lot easier.
Which was the first? Which one was the first book?
The first book's Built to Succeed.
Okay.
It's just, all it is just a sort of shares some of my personal life, and it's just on personal development. Second book, The Secret to Marriage. I mean, I wrote that one it took me 7 hours, but I did it differently though. I did it in a way where I did it on audio, just like this, as I got my computer and with a microphone and I talked every chapter, and then I had it transcribed. But I mean, 53,000 words in 7 hours—that's a lot of talking. But
I actually have it over here somewhere, and I've read it, and it's actually a really good book.
I mean, I had Brian Tracy as an endorsement on the Secret to Marriage book, so I was pretty happy that I got Brian Tracy as an endorsement on the book.
How'd you do that? If you don't mind me asking, you called them?
I called up their office and I asked. Absolutely.
Wow,
exactly.
That's awesome.
I said, look, I have bought almost every one of your programs, and I didn't get to talk to Brian. I did talk to, because he was out of town, so I talked to the gal who runs his office, and I said, look, I bought every one of your programs. I've done everything that you guys have done. And she said, okay, she said, send me this, and that. And so I did. And then one day I'm just sitting there and I get this email with Brian Tracy's endorsement. He says, Brian wanted to endorse you. He said, thank you for buying all those products. And I'm like, yes. That's a big win for me.
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, in every way imaginable, because I did something that most people would never do. They're afraid to ask.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, Tim is really good at that. Tim calls anybody and everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was one of the things that I realized is that I heard a lot of people say, they're like, hey, it's just as easy. You just got to ask people. And I watch all these people be like, well, how did you get that person? Or how did you get that company? Or what'd you do? And all the people that, I've learned from or heard from or looked up to, they're all like, you just ask. And I was like, it can't be that easy. And through a long time, I never thought it was that easy until I started doing it, and it really is that easy. I mean, granted, you want to try to scratch other people's backs a little bit, like you bought their products, so they felt like hey, this guy is an avid fan or whatever, and so they wanted to help you out more than just an average person. But it's nothing crazy like we all put in our heads.
And you're right, Tim, and that's another thing I've come to realize is most people will, unless they have an attitude or they have an ego problem, most people will bend over backwards to help you out. Like I know several people that I could reach out and pick their brain, and it's like, yeah, this is what you do. This is what you do. This is what you do. Oh, okay. And it's funny because, so if someone contacted me to help them out, I'll do it. But in our minds, sometimes we put people we know or things of that nature, like, oh, well, they're too busy, or they would never help me out, or they're at a different level. And it's just funny how, no, they're people too. And 9 times out of 10, if you're nice to them and take them out to lunch. So those of you that want help, take me out to lunch. I'm joking. I'm kidding. Totally kidding. No, but it's just kind of funny how that works is, people will help you out if you ask.
It's a perfect example of how your business won't grow unless you grow. You have to, get out of that comfort and then realize that you can extend yourself, and that can also help your business grow. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck if you don't take those chances.
Yeah, and I that the business won't grow unless you grow. And that's the absolute truth. always said to my employees is you get 100% of what you don't ask for. Ask.
Mm.
So I'm going to share a story that I was told many, many years ago by my aunt. My Uncle Max was in a job interview. Him and another guy were in the same interview. So they're just like if you, I was interviewing both of you guys right now. So in the same interview, at the end of the interview, the guy said, he said, "Okay, guys, I'm going to hire both of you." He looked at Max and he goes, "Max, how much money do you want?" And Max said, "Well, I want 60 grand." He was a computer programmer. And the guy goes, "Okay, done." He looked at the other guy. He said, "How much money do you want?" He said, "Well, I want 75 grand." He goes, "Okay, done." Can you imagine how stupid he felt for lowballing himself?
Yep.
So I always tell people, just ask. What's the worst they tell you? No.
Yep.
But at least you can negotiate. When you negotiate, you can't negotiate up. It's so hard to go up.
That's so true.
What's the highest you'll pay me?
Right. What's the highest you'll pay me? This is what I like. I've had employees. I'm like, what do you actually want? I mean, they're like, I'm like, just spit it out. Don't be afraid. Tell me what you want, because I want to know what they want, because I want to see where they see them, how they value themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
that's really interesting, especially being, Eric being in the coaching area. It's interesting how, wow, I just lost my train of thought there. We were talking. Man, as I'm getting older, man, it's just like I'll have something, all of a sudden it's like boom, gone. I don't know. Oh yeah, okay. No, people don't know what they do want. Like, they know what they don't want, but very rarely anymore, or very rarely do people ever spend time on what they do want. And I'm sure you've come to find in your own life, Eric and Tim, when you do figure out what you do want out of life, that's when things start happening, right? I mean, would you agree, or Eric?
It makes it a lot easier.
It does make it a lot easier.
If you can see the target, you're going to get a lot closer.
Right. It really makes it, if you can just decide, hey, I want to do this and I want to work towards this, and then you decide, okay, how am I going to get to there? You know, when you just building a house, when you build a house, you build with the end in mind. You get a blueprint, you have the whole thing drawn up, and then you're building with the end in mind. Then you start working towards that very goal. But there's a process in getting there. But you got to start with something.
Yeah.
And if you can see it, it's easier to get to.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to start it, because if you don't, then you're just kind of waiting for it to come along to tell you what you do want. And then by then it's too late, like for sometimes to get the most out of it. But a lot of the time, if you just start the journey, you figure it out along the way. Like certain things, you'll be like, well, that's not what I wanted at all. And you get closer faster to what you really want, because you actually tried to go for it.
And you can eliminate a lot of things too. As you're on that journey, you eliminate what doesn't work.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Something I said, Tim, to go along with what you said is, I told even someone that I said, don't spend your whole life at the starting line. Just start doing it. Boom.
Yep.
Don't sit there waiting for it, for everything to be in the right place, the right time, and everything's going to fall. It's never going to fall in place. It's never going to be right. Mm-hmm. Just do it. And you're going to learn on the journey as you go.
Absolutely. And a big takeaway that you started off with on this episode is that you kind of had your back against the wall. You had kids, you had to make money, so you had nowhere to go but to start. And I think that a lot of people don't realize the power of putting yourself in that position. Whether you do it on purpose, I think for a lot of us it ends up just happening. But if you can kind of put yourself in that position sooner, your life will begin sooner in a way, and you can start carving it out in the directions that you want to go. Whereas a lot of us, I think, like you're saying, we kind of sit back and wait for life to happen to us rather than making it happen for us.
It becomes a habit. It really becomes a habit when you do that. I mean, my kids will tell you something about it. So I said one day, a month ago, I said, hey, who wants to go to Hawaii? And all these people raised their hands, and the next day I planned a trip for 22 people to go to Hawaii. We're all going to Hawaii. I saw my daughters in there ironing some stuff on some T-shirts, like stuff on T-shirts with some iron. I'm like, why don't you buy your press? I said, now let's start a T-shirt company. So I went and bought, a commercial press. I bought this, I bought that to start a T-shirt company. I started. I put something in movement to get us going to where we want to be. But I make it a simple habit of just starting these things. And once again, if I start it and I don't like it, guess what I can do? I can throw it away and start something different.
Yeah.
I stick with it. I'm not stuck and married to anything. I can change on any given day.
Yeah, I have to say that. Well, let's pop this up here. Justin says, "Do it now," and
Yeah.
and he said that before, and it's so true. And in fact, just like this Facebook Live, this is a live example of just do it now, because you know what, this is the 6th episode. 6 weeks ago on a Tuesday evening, 5 minutes before 6:30, I reach out to Tim and I'm like, "Hey Tim, what are you doing right now?" And he's like, nothing. What's going on? Hey, do you want to hop on and do a Facebook Live show? And he's like,
What should I
sure.
do?
Yeah. And the cool thing about Tim is he's never done a Facebook Live before, so it was all brand new for him. And he rolled the dice, and he's here, and we rolled the dice, and it's growing. You know, it's here. And that's the thing. It's like, if you have an idea, the thing is sometimes it's better to shoot first and ask questions later. And what I mean by that is, well, exactly what I mean is, when you start before the fear stops you. You know, because sometimes our brain will make all these different things pop up, like what could or what might happen or whatever. But when you just start and you adjust as you go, you start learning before the fear sets in and stops you, if that makes any sense. And at least that's what I've seen in my life with other endeavors, as well as this. Just do it and then adjust as you go. And then it doesn't become emotional. Then it becomes something else.
And if you don't start, you can never know where you're going to be.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Start. I mean, Tim, when you started your business doing online sales, Amazon sales, you probably had never done it before. It was
never, totally brand new.
And now here you are. You can teach someone how to do it all day long, over and over and over. But you had to start. You could have never been part of it unless you actually started.
That was one of the biggest lessons that I had learned. Luckily, I had been in a position where I felt like my back was against the wall and I just had to do something different. And so I went out and I tried it, and it's been one of the greatest things that I've ever done. I mean, I've realized that I was wasting, time in my life by not just doing stuff that I should be doing or wanted to be doing. And instead I was kind of in that hamster wheel of waiting for like life to kind of happen, because I was content, and instead of realizing that there's so much more in front of me that I could go after if I just tried. And by trying something new, realizing that, there's a moment of discomfort when you try anything new, but if you get through it, it always ends up being worth it. And one of the biggest things that I love about having your own business, because again, like we said, personal growth and business go hand in hand, is that it's one of the best business one of the best personal growth journeys you can ever go on. I mean, you're going to love the person you become afterwards. As long as you keep with it and push yourself through it, you become more comfortable in situations that you weren't comfortable in. And you find that you now have skill sets or, knowledge about something that other people can look up to, and it feels great to be able to like reciprocate that back to people. And it's amazing how different it is. And once I started, I definitely wanted as many people as I knew personally to go on the same journey as me. But of course, people aren't necessarily ready for it. But if anybody is even thinking about starting their own business, just do it. It's one of the greatest things you can do for yourself.
And then to add on that, the cool thing about it is the people that you meet.
Yes.
I mean, there's going to be people that aren't going to get your vision, and sadly, hey, that's their journey. But the people that you meet on your journey, like the journey that I went on to become a life coach several years ago, that's where I met Eric. And Eric and I, we're great friends. I love that guy. I love you, Eric. And Tim,
Eric's awesome.
Tim, I love you too. And the thing is like, you meet new people along the journey that get the vision and the knowledge and the experience that you're going to get along the way. There's a synergy there, and it's really cool. But real quick, we have a question. Steve Kimsey, he's from Arkansas, says, text generate 300K. I guess there's something out there that says text generate 300K revenue on average. What % salary would you pay the tech of that revenue?
So what they say you should pay is they don't want you going over like 28% of that. I mean, but so that's going to depend on everybody. Like our guys will make 80 grand plus a year working for us. So they make a pretty good living, and they work, we don't work after hours. So the going thing that they'll teach you in any coaching company is they're going to do is never be more like 28% of what they generate in revenue wise. Because then you got to think about, okay, well, if you send a tech out to one call, how much money did it cost to get him out to that one call? So when, let's say he does 500 calls, so it costs each call is $100 each to get him out to those calls. So that adds up very quickly. Then so everything has a value associated to it at the end of the day. So you're like in our industry, the industry standards is usually between 3% and like 12% in profit margins. There's not a big profit margin for what we do. When you add in the marketing costs, the fuel, the insurance, the van, the time, the downtime, all of the above. So to answer your question, around 28% is going to be your national average where you really want to be, and no more than that. I've been as high as 33% of that revenue, and it just depends on the employee. Some of the employees, they just do a better job. I've had guys where I had one guy paid him $110,000 a year to work in our company. He made pretty good money to work for us. So I hope that answers your question.
And Steve, if it doesn't, ask some more questions or clarify, and then we'll get you the answer.
Was that guy that? Oh, go ahead.
It also depends on your geolocation as well, and what the wage standards are for your geolocation. Because sometimes, like in Florida, like give you an idea here. So like, I'll pay employees $40 an hour here. Like in Florida, you might make $25 an hour if you're lucky. So there's a big difference, but yet they're still generating the same amount of revenue is what we see across the board. I knew a guy that was out of Baltimore. They did, he was doing, I want to say when I used to talk to him years ago, he was doing $20 million a year in revenue. But when I looked at his numbers, his guys were only producing, he had 100 guys. So they're only producing around little over $200,000 per service tech, which really wasn't that high. But he sold the company for like $150 million though. So he was able to sell it for a lot of money. But he was in business for 20 years. He built it from ground up. So his guys could have been very different on how they were paid versus my guys, versus someone in Arkansas, versus someone in Oklahoma. It's always going to be different. But if we look at the margin, it should never really be more than 28% of their gross of the gross revenue that they generate. That's overall in the company. Say you're $1 million a year company, shouldn't be over $280,000 in wages to your service techs.
No, makes sense. Tim,
was that guy that you had to pay over $100,000 a year for? Was he worth that extra cost, or do you think, looking back, that maybe it was worth? No, yeah, okay.
No, dude, I mean, the one thing I've learned in business is you're not going to make everybody happy. You're going to piss a lot of people off. That is the one thing. You're going to make people think that you're the worst person in the world. You ruined my life. I mean, that guy, that very guy I'm talking about, he would. I made him a foreman. I would have him train employees, and he would just dog me all the time to the new employees. I'm like, dude, I give you company vehicle, paid vacation, paid holidays, full insurance, full all of the above, $110,000 a year, and all you do is dog me. I'm like, even if you don't like me, just shut your mouth, because you're not going to get this anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, he had it made, but he was not a good fit to be a leader in the company at all. But once it's a learning curve, because you want to try to do the very best, bring in the very best, what appears to be the best, and that doesn't always pan out. Flexibility is the key thing to survival in business. Brian Tracy said it best: you hire slow, but you fire fast. If it doesn't work, don't keep it. Just let it go.
Now, have you ever been in a situation where, well, I guess the guy, I mean, did you let him go right away? Or, I mean, so did he do good work or no? And have you ever been in a situation where
I found out, I let him go right away?
Okay. Yeah. All right.
There was no questions asked. It was instant.
Right. Yeah. Because you don't want that to permeate the company and ruin the
not at all
the environment that you built. Steve says that answers the question. Thanks. And then Jared says that was a great answer.
It was.
And it was. Wow, you it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge. But
I can give you too, because I can show you $1 million of wasted money very quickly, very easily by being in business.
Well, I remember there was a story that you told me that you learned about billboards. I mean, I remember when, I remember you telling me a story when we first met about, it was cool and you were able to do that. But in retrospect, it was really kind of, you want to go ahead and talk about that or?
Oh yeah, it was a waste of money. So, every local, so a billboard is more for branding than it is for generating and now we call them now calls. You want service now. So when you're first in business, you'll spend money on anything because you don't know any better at all. You'll have advertisers from all over the place call you up, show up at your office. Hey, I got this great program. Try this out, and you're eager, you're excited. You're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and so you'll sign any kind of advertisement. So I did my first billboard on a busy highway. So one thing we did, we tracked every single phone call, every advertisement had a tracking number associated to the advertisement, so we could track where the calls came.
Gotcha.
So the billboard cost me $25,000. I had my beautiful face up on this billboard. My wife's face was right next to me. I looked really good on this billboard. it made my ego so good because everywhere I went, but that billboard cost $25,000. We generated $18,000 from that billboard.
Ooh.
So that was horrible. It was a horrible investment. But I learned. But I also had all these benches too. Like at the grocery store, there's these benches. You walk in there, there's a bench. And there's my beautiful face with benches.
And everybody's sitting there, beautiful butts, right on your face.
Oh, I heard, like, oh, hey, people take pictures. I said, you just said on your face. I'm like, but the problem with the billboard was this. Now, some billboards can be good. It depends on where you are, what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish. But for me, the way I did it was not good at all. I got myself stuck in a contract for $25 for the whole year. Whether it did good or bad, it didn't make a difference. So you still got to pay the money no matter what. So I learned a hard lesson there. Never sign contracts for advertising. Always have a way out if you do. Always have a way out if you do. Because if it doesn't work, you want to get rid of it. You do not want to waste money on it. So now people tell me, we're like, well, the first thing I asked, I said, okay, is there a contract? They're like, well, there's a 6-month. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to do it then. Well, but I'm like, no, listen, I spent millions of dollars in advertising. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sign your contract for me to be in an advertising program that I don't know works. Because everybody thinks their program's going to work.
Right.
But I can show you most of it. So then I'm very specific about what I want and how I want to advertise and what kind of business I want to get and how I want to get it. That's the difference between being in business then and being in business now. I know exactly what I will not do, and I know exactly what I will do. Then I'm willing to try a few things here and there with lots of restrictions built into it so I don't waste money.
Would you mind if you don't mind, would you mind expanding on what you won't do? Like, you won't do contracts. Is there anything else that you wouldn't do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we used to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we only do 7:30 a.m. to around 5 p.m. each day, 5 days a week. We no longer make our service techs be on call all the time. We found that kills our service techs and it takes away from their lives. I want them to have some of the same freedom that I have. I don't want them to have to be on call all the time, have to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's one thing I decided we would not do. Number 2, I would not ever sign advertising contracts ever again. Number 3, the one thing I decided, we're only going to do these things in business. We're not going to do X, Y, Z, but we are going to do the rest of these things here. We're going to focus on things that are profitable. Because I used to be all things to everybody.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, this is not doing us any good at all. This is hurting us business-wise. So I decided that we're only going to focus on these things that are profitable versus just everything that I can try to get my hands on just because I want to make a few bucks. At whose expense? The question is always at what expense and whose expense. It can't be about my employees' expense anymore. It has to be about they have a good life just like I have a good life. And that's what we focus on.
You know, that's interesting that you said that, like, being all things to all people. I have found in my life different programs and different things that I've been a part of, when they try to be all things to all people, they end up being nothing to anybody because you don't be good at anything. Now,
right.
Yes, I know that was a mouthful, but yeah, but it's so true. And it's like, you ratcheting down what you wanted to focus on actually paid dividends, I'm sure. So
it makes all the difference in the world. We have found that we can be more profitable and do better, make more by being specific for what we do versus just trying to fill all the holes.
Right.
We're going to fill the holes that bring us the best value.
Yeah, by being specific, you're you're able to give the customers more of what they want because they know what you're offering rather than having expectations that might not be what you can fulfill on. At least that's what I've noticed in my own business.
Man, there's a guys and gals, everybody that's watching, listening, or listening to this in the future. There are a lot of gold nuggets to take away from this conversation, and
There was.
they really appreciate it. But now we're getting we're about 50 minutes in, and before we move on to tinfoil hat, let me do this day in history. This day in history in 1780, Americans suffer the worst defeat I can't even talk. During the American Revolution, the Americans suffered the worst defeat in Charleston. There was also something else that was pretty big. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Oh, kidnapped Lindbergh baby found dead. So that's, I'm reading history.com, this day in history. And so that's what happened today. Before we move on into the tinfoil hat time, does anybody have any other questions for, and if you do have questions for Eric while we're even in the tinfoil hat time, we can go ahead and answer those then as well. But now it is time for, let me get the banner up, tinfoil hat time.
Love it.
So, of course, I probably won't wear this the whole time because it gets hot. I got these lights, to try to Anyway, it's warm. So today I wanted to talk about UFOs. So a couple weeks ago, let's see, on April 27th, the Department of Defense released historical Navy videos of UFOs, and I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but I watched them today, and they're about, actually the U.S. Navy released them back in, well, I don't know if they released them, but they were released back a few years back. So really this is just a regurgitation of released videos. So we've seen these videos before, but I find it interesting that the Pentagon is like, yeah, they didn't really say, when you look at the press release, obviously, being government and legalese, it's not very, they don't say one thing or another. It's just, yeah, this happened. So, but it's interesting though. What do you think, Tim and Eric? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know how they can dispute a lot of the accounts of, I'm not saying aliens, but UFOs, just because it seems like there's been a lot of correlations with like world events, like missiles going off, and somehow the UFO is sighted around that. All those going off, UFOs surrounded by that. So it's very interesting. And then when you watch some of these videos, the movements that they take, just I don't know how you can explain them other than it being some sort of object that we don't necessarily know about yet. Just because I don't know of anything in the air that can just stop and then change directions. So to me, it just seems like there's something more that's going on that we don't know about.
It is interesting. I mean, it's an interesting topic, and it's one of those things like, it's always in the back of your mind, kind of like ghosts or things like that. Until you get, until you see it yourself, it's just up in the air. It's like, well, I don't know one way or another. But I do know, and then you think about, well, what would happen if there was full disclosure? What would happen if, tomorrow they came out and said, oh my gosh, this is real. These things are visiting us or whatever. I mean, that society would change. Well, I don't know if it would be interesting to see what would happen. I think there would be panic because, and Eric, I mean, I apologize, but feel free to jump in if you have any thought on this. But I think people would panic, and the reason why go ahead. Well, you came in a little broken there. Say that again.
You guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're cutting out, man. We'll see if he can pop back in or what. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. Anyway, he's gone. All right, so
I personally, I'm a more of a man of things are, possible rather than impossible. And to me, the sheer numbers of how many planets, stars, universes, or galaxies are out there, I think it's definitely possible that there's somebody else besides us. Just from the sheer numbers, not whether I've experienced something that made me feel this way or whatever. Just by the numbers, it seems like it should be possible.
right, and it's funny. Even in like anything is possible, right? Everything is
Yeah.
possible. Oh, and by the way, for those of that are listening on podcast, Eric, I guess dropped the call. So, yep, and he even pops on. I lost you guys. It's all good, Eric. Eric, thank you so much for participating, and thank you for being a part of the conversation. I think that was an amazing conversation. But as far as the UFOs, going back to that topic, it really, the reason why I think if it ever did come out, like full disclosure, like, hey, tomorrow the government says yes, there are. I remember one time I was driving. It was after I came home from Afghanistan, and I was driving. I was just driving home. I was on the interstate, and a buddy of mine called me up, and it was a guy I worked with overseas, and I forget what we were talking about, but he said they're here, and I mean there was no there was nothing leading into that statement. It was like as soon as I answered, he's like they're here, and for some reason, I immediately I got this deep fear, like a sense of fear overcame me, and I'm like, in my mind, I was thinking Alien Nation or Independence Day, they're here, but it was nothing. I mean, it was obviously an innocent phone call, and it was about something completely different. But I remember my initial reaction of hearing this, and I'm thinking, this fearful, like, oh my gosh, what if this is real? Because you got to think about our society, and it almost reminds me of the same of going back to when people found out that the world wasn't the center of the universe. Like that would freak a lot of people out. What do you mean that's not the center of the universe?
Yep.
And so I think, I don't know. I've never had anything personally happen to me, but
I think that, and this is just my bad answer. I think that I think that a lot of people would freak out. It would cause a lot of chaos. I mean, you can look at like how Corona's caused quite a bit of chaos with people. So I think that the government knows this, and so I think that they've been trying to keep things. They may not have the full answer of whether there's something there or not, but the fact that there's evidence pointing to it, I think that they're trying to keep it under wraps. The world, Earth is round,
and it's
not
true.
flat.
And my brother brings up, or the world that is round and not flat. People freaked out about that. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. People went to jail for thinking that crazy thought,
Right. I mean, they were almost burned at the stake almost.
Yep.
Daniel, thanks for being here, buddy. He's here.
You made it.
You made it. Of course, we're not going to be on very much longer, but you made it for the time that you did. And we appreciate you being here. And Justin says chaos trying to walk around the store and referring to coronavirus, which and that's another thing. It's like our responses. We have such a fragmented responses to many different things, and and we live in a society that values freedom, and I don't know. It's all unique, and it's all really strange.
It is. And there's 2 points that I'd like to make on that. Is the reason that I think that the government knows more than what they're willing to tell, which is generally the case.
What
is is that like they're in the U.S. I feel like they've tried to pin it against people who seems questionable with their sanity, and I saw that there was I think it was in 1976 there was a sighting in Iran, and the Iranian government were the ones that actually came out about it, and the higher officials, and the fact that they didn't try to point it towards somebody crazy, they came out with something more official, I think leads to the fact that there is a possibility. Another thing that, and I don't remember where I watched this or read this or whatever. There was a time, I believe I think it was in England or somewhere, and I think in Europe, there was a sighting, and the newspapers came out with an official release from the government. And then when the government kind of was questioned about it again later, they retracted everything about it and said they didn't say anything about it. And I think that that's kind of a weird thing to flip flop on it. Like, I think it's one thing to say, like, yeah, we said that, we kind of are disregarding it, we found evidence otherwise. But then to just kind of dismiss it really makes me wonder what more that they know. I just, that's the only reason why I keep interest in this, is because I was like, there's something that they know or that they're not willing to release yet to the public for probably reasons like how people blow up over things, and
Well,
you never know how
and you got to
society will
wonder.
take it.
That's true, and you got to wonder if, like, over the past few years, they've because obviously, you know, it's always an interest. You know, there's more movies about it. There's more slow releases of it. Maybe because, you know, I think that there's an analogy that I like to use. Not analogy, but when it comes to media, back in the day before, you know, we had instantaneous media, you know, news was a slow burn issue, right? They would release news and it would take, you know, 2 to 3 days for it to become a global thing. Like if something happened on Monday, you really probably wouldn't find out until that night on the news or the next day or whatever. And so it was slow burn. But now we live in a society that news is instantaneous and it's an explosive. There's no slow burn there. It's right there, right now. Boom. Oh, actually, you know, that's funny. He said, Justin says this: tinfoil shortage.
Tinfoil.
Tinfoil. Uh-oh. That's, I told him I can't read. Yeah, your green screen is kind of coming in a little bit.
Oh, this side. Yeah, there we go.
That's all right. But, you know, and my brother Jared, he pops this up with his comment. What does Trump know? He started the Space Force. So you can look at it two things. You can look at it like, what did he see that warranted the Space Force?
Yeah.
Or you could look at it like, as much as he's on Twitter, there's no such thing as aliens, because otherwise he would probably go ahead and say, "Oh my gosh, there's aliens!" Right? I mean, it's it goes both ways. You know, it's like, what did he see that warrants the Space Force? And then at the same time, you know, there might not be aliens because he had probably already let it out of the bag. But I don't know.
There is a theory, and I have to say that I can't figure out how else to position a solution. But there's a theory that, you know, with the ancient pyramids, they're saying that the aliens have been visiting us or UFOs, or whatever you want to call it, they've been visiting us for a long time. And the pyramids is one of the examples they bring up. If you look at pyramids, and they've actually brought in like lasers to test the dimensions, the blocks are cut perfect. And they didn't have technology back then or machinery to cut perfect size blocks. Thank you. It is tinfoil hat time.
Yeah. I don't want people to come in the conversation and be like, "What the heck are these guys doing?"
And so one of the things that they found, I think, in one of the biggest pyramids, was a thing that looked like a light bulb, and the purpose of it was to capture energy and emit light from it. And they don't know how they came across that, you know, thousands of years ago. And I don't know how they figured out how to do the blocks in the pyramid so precisely with the math behind it. Which is why, you know, yeah, exactly. Stonehenge.
Yeah. Marcel said, "My wife, thank you for watching."
Yes, thank you.
Stonehenge.
Dang autocorrect. But
and like I said, and the reason why I wanted to pop up tinfoil hat time, just to let you know, for those that are new to our show, tinfoil hat time is basically the safe time to talk about off-topic topics like UFOs or ghosts or anything that's kind of interesting that, you know, you might feel weird talking to people about, but hey, this is a safe time to talk about it. Let's see. Whoa, I don't know what. So Jared pops this up. Well, it might have been left over from the Atlantis before it sank. You know, and that's another thing. It's like, you know, there's different. Well, I mean, there's different schools of thought. Some people think that the world is billions of years old, and then there's other people that believe that it's only 6,000 years old. And you know, depending on whatever. And then, you start seeing, and that's something else that I kind of want to bring up now, is like you see how even in the time of coronavirus where people aren't out and about, you see nature encroaching back in on society.
Yeah.
And it's relatively quick. I think it's quicker than we really thought. And so is it that far-fetched that maybe there was a civilization that was pretty advanced that may have for some reason imploded and then
absolutely
disappeared? Because that's the Wheel of Time. That's a good book series, by the way. Hold on. Let's see. Let's pop some of these up. The tech. Patrick has an interesting topic. I don't know if
I can't bleep out that word.
Yeah. What's up with cavity searches? I don't know. I've never had it happen to me, and I don't want to.
I agree. I want to know where the origin of that came from, because that can't be like all they care about, and that tended to be like a lot of the stories. They're like, oh, they're probing humans. It's like,
well, I think it's because no one wants to get probed, and so therefore it just adds to the angst of it. It's like, oh my God, UFOs, and they probe you. Ah, yeah. Actually, it's funny because Geneva, she brings up this Gulf Breeze UFOs. In fact, I grew up near Gulf Breeze, so that was actually a local, a local thing that happened in my area. And I don't know if it was debunked later. I need to follow up on that, but. Justin says probably implanting. With what? I don't know, and I don't want to. Probing doesn't sound fun. Daniel says no. Let's get off that. So Daniel, what is? I'm not familiar with that terminology. For those that are listening in, I'm going to butcher this. And
Anunnaki.
Anunnaki. Hi, I'm Kayleen. I'm 5 years old. I'm hooked on phonics.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, seeing how our process works. I mean, we dissect animals all the time in high school, and we always go through things and see what's what. So has anybody that is watching now or watching in the future or listening on podcast? Okay, so for those of you that are watching now, have you come across or have you seen anything that was interesting? Remember, this is a safe time to talk about these things, and you can be like, well, I don't know exactly what I saw, but this is what I saw. If you need to be a little bit more finesse about talking about your story, we understand totally. No judgment here. But if you are listening to this in the future and you do have a story or you have something that you came across or you thought about, you can either send us an email at goodquestionsbadanswers@gmail.com, or you can just let us know. Live. Hop on the live next week and tell us about it. My brother says, my brother. Yes. Okay, so the Anunnaki, I think I misspelled it. They are a mythical race from the Southwest, supposedly inhabited cliff cities. It's interesting. My brother brought up the UFO house, Pensacola Beach.
I've never heard that.
Well, there's a house in Pensacola Beach, and it's shaped like a UFO. And in fact, I think it was there was like several of them that were made back in the 1960s. And there's one in Finland, and there's not very many of them anymore, but there's a couple. But yeah, it's a space. It looks like a spacecraft, but a flying saucer, but it's a house, and that's pretty neat. A mythical race, Southwest. There's a lot of interesting stories out there, and at some point we'll be probably talk about those. My brother was talking to me this past week about something that happened in Southern Illinois, something that involved Jared, write it because I can't remember it. Thunderbirds, yeah. Which is basically like these mythical creatures that were these huge birds, and they created lightning. Futuro house. There's still several around the world, maybe 20. That's right.
Huh.
Yes, my wife and I, we love researching odd things, and so I
Does
have a talent for learning about different things. But
I wonder if having a Futuro house is like a better for your value or worse to people.
Well, it's one of a kind, so it's old though, so not lightning, just huge birds. Okay. Well, I think I've heard of other stories with the Thunderbirds, is because I guess that's why they call them Thunderbirds, is because they create lightning. But that could be another story, and that's obviously another topic that we could cover some other time in the future. But yeah, UFOs, it's an interesting topic. Ah, yes. It is better for hurricanes because we live on the coast, and
That makes sense.
yeah, because aerodynamics, wind just kind of goes right over it.
Yeah.
So, but it's not so good for storm surges. So, yes. In fact, actually, you know what? If you want to start, so, Geneva says, "I'm glad I checked my Facebook. I love the loving the tinfoil." So, you as the viewer, if you're an asshole, which that's what we call the people that love our show, assholes, because you're going to ask questions and we're going to try to answer them. But if you have created your own tinfoil hat, send us a picture. We'll put it up on Facebook, and yes. and so that way we know that we're not alone in our tinfoil hats.
So if you guys have any good topics for tinfoil hat time, feel free to email us.
That's right, because remember, this show is your show, and really we rely on you for topics as well as conversation, and who knows, so if you want to know about something or you want a topic talked about, reach out, let us know either through the email or Facebook or whatever. Daniel says, owning a Futuro house would be like owning a Frank Lloyd Wright. Wow. I don't know, because Frank Lloyd Wright, I mean, he was an architect of renown, and then also just the just the beauty of, and don't get me wrong, the Futuro, I can't even talk. Those houses, the spacecraft houses, they're cool, but they're not really. I mean, they're kind of small. Even better.
Yeah.
Daniel says he's going to make a cast aluminum hat. Does that count? You know what? Send us a picture. We'll put it on Facebook. But anyway, hey guys, it's getting to be about 15 or 12 minutes past the hour of doing this. I think we pretty much covered it. Tim, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right. I think tonight was a great conversation. Having Eric on really added to a great conversation. And like I said, if you have an idea or if you want to come on to the show and want to talk about something, if there's a topic that you would like to talk about or a subject matter that you're really good at and you want to come and talk to us about it and answer questions about it, well, send us an email at, let me pop that up on the comments. Not the comments, but the where is it at? Good questions, bad answers, and we will try to get that show up and going, or at least we'll plan it out. But until then, hold on. Eric Hats wins. Yes, that's right, Eric.
This Maui hat.
So going back to the Futuro house, there were fewer than 100 built in the 60s. So now, Eric, you're awesome, and thank you so much for
the wealth of information.
Yeah, seriously, that was I was blown away just listening to that.
Yeah, same.
And every time I talk to Eric, it's usually like that. So, and I appreciate your friendship, and thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to fix my hat. But anyway, everyone watching, thank you so much for spending your time with us. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube, hey, we appreciate you watching. If you like it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching on podcast, or if you're listening to us on podcasts, hey, I appreciate that too. In fact, if you wouldn't mind emailing us and telling us what you like or what you don't like about us, and that goes for everybody else, what you do like or what you'd like to see more of, or what you might, whatever. Hey, we can take constructive criticism. Well, maybe. I don't know. That's messed up. But thank you. No, but anyway, everyone, take care of each other, and God bless, and we'll see y'all next week.